I call to order, please. Could I have a roll call?
Yes, you may. Board Member Sherman. Here. Board President Gutierrez.
Here.
Board Member Inesco.
Here.
Board Member Schmidt.
Here.
Board Clerk McDowell.
Present.
Board Member Peterson.
Here.
So, Mr. President, we're just missing Board Member Bode.
And I will read the public comments section. Anyone is interested? The public is able to make comments during the public comment period and on the business and action agenda. When making a public comment, you will need to state your full name and whether you reside within city limits within Mason County or reside elsewhere. There are 3 options for the public to participate in the meeting. 1, join the Zoom by clicking on the link displayed at the city's website. 2, email Jeff Knighton at sheltonlaw.gov. And 3, by calling the city manager Knighton at 360-432-5105. Are there any general public comments at this time?
We don't have anyone in person, and let me quickly look at Zoom here. No, we do not have anyone signed up.
And the consent agenda. We do.
I moved to approve the consent agenda as published.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And all those in favor?
I
Opposed? Consent agenda is passed. Business agenda. Are there any business items, Mr. Ziegler? Okay. Then we'll move on to the action agenda. Are there any action items on the agenda? Okay, then we'll go to section F, administration report. I would like to make a comment here that we welcome Sarah DeHart to our meetings. Also that we talked about possible, but you're gonna go, no. Okay. Well, I'm gonna turn it up to the floor. Mark Ziegler, talk about the
Thank you.
administration report.
Thank you, President Gutierrez. It's a great segue. I appreciate that. Use some of our time tonight to recognize the Parks and Recreation Citizens Advisory Committee. Now that's full board, full committee of 5 members. I wanted to bring their names tonight in public and to the board to recognize them. They are Melissa Stearns, Sue Patterson, Kim Oliver, Sarah DeHart, and Mel Schneider. We've had 2 very robust meetings the last couple months discussing park planning and park funding and being able to meet our community's needs now and in the future. And I think we'll have some very interesting information for you very soon to consider as we look at growth in the community and the CIP and the capital improvement programs that have been established through the Parks, Recreation, Open Space and Trails Plan. As we learned with our master planning with Eagle Point, construction costs have skyrocketed and are really starting to diminish, some of the funds that we were earmarking for capital improvements at the Metropolitan Park District general tax revenue. So we're looking at what we can do internally, what we might be able to do externally, and bring options to the board in the future for funding some of these projects, and then also to meet growth. We've talked a lot about our existing development code and specifically the subdivision ordinance and its generic, ambiguous language, much like our development code in other areas that we brought to the council. And so we hope to bring some information to the council and some recommendations to the board, recommendations in the future that may help some of our development community really meet some of the standards in our pros plan, because it's a little bit of back and forth, a little bit ambiguous right now. So looking forward to coming in front of the board and the council with additional information later. One of those projects is the Coffee Creek subdivision. I know you've heard about that for quite some time. We're getting closer to a hearing for that project. Notice the application is out right now. Part of that project requires that developed to meet parks and recreation standards. So we're working with them to meet those standards within that development, but also hopefully bring recreation amenities to the greater neighborhood in that area of town, because one of the areas that we lack as identified in our Parks, Recreation, Open Space and Trails plan. So we'll have some more information on that in the near future as well. And then the last thing I want to touch base on is our new Movies in the Park series. Staff is working, putting that schedule together, reaching out to local business communities surrounding Neelan Park, Mason Transit, and some other partners that might be involved there, staffing levels and things like that. So we'll have some more information for the general public, council and the board here in the near future to help promote those family activities down at Neelan Park on Friday evenings, starting in July. And I'm open to any questions that the board may have if you have any.
Are there any questions? I have a couple questions. Some of the participants on the board talking about revenue generated in the future. Could you talk about how we could increase funding in case there are shortfalls in the future?
So, yeah, part of that conversation is we have one revenue fund, right? General property tax revenue, the Metropolitan Park District collects. So it's not dedicated to capital improvements or M&O. So we first and foremost spend our funds on maintenance and operation of our existing facilities and address future parks, our deficiencies as stated in our Parks and Recreation Open Space and Trails plan, with any funding that might come in. We have a fund balance reserve that we want to keep in place for following the city's ordinance, 16% as well, cash reserves. So that's the balance, right? And as inflation increases higher than, revenue increases, we have to make some choices on how we're going to provide the amenities that the community wants and needs in the future, but also maintain the existing infrastructure. Our parks plan really lists out a lot of funding mechanisms, from levies and bonds and impact fees, utility taxes. There's a lot of those concepts, I guess, at this point in parks fund that we need to vet some more and kind of rank and prioritize and see what the appetite is of the community and of the board itself. So that's again part of the conversation that will be coming to the board.
And one of the possible funding sources was councilmanic.
Part of bonds are either councilmanic or general obligation bonds. So there's two options for bonding for capital improvements. Yeah,
So there are options in the future. Should there be?
certainly.
Any other questions? Kathy?
So in these parks that we do, the little projects in within the parks make the park special, like Neelan Park is play area. Remember when we raised the money for the clock tower over here? We passed the hat at Music in the Park.
Ultimately, yes.
Yep, yeah,
So you could
those are
talk
fun
about-
things to do. Is there a possibility of a little project in each park, the community getting involved in and passing the hat and funding it and?
Absolutely. I think those are activities that not only build community and build these facilities and these amenities, but also creates ownership, right? Creates some
Right.
level of interest in those facilities long term. And we're working with a community group now up at Northcliffe Neighborhood Park and looking at establishing those committees right now to do the very thing that you just mentioned.
I like that. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Mr. Ziegler? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Ziegler.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
We will move on to the announcement of the next meeting, which will be September 20th, 2022 at 5:45 p.m. And now we are, the Shelton Metropolitan Parks District is adjourned.